die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. There's a hurricane in my earthquake, and we're all wondering why. Let's turn on the news and find out how we're gonna die.
It hurts me to talk about this stuff. I know that people do not want to hear about it. I don't like, David, that my life, I'm now stuck in the algorithm of I get a whole lot of weather stuff on YouTube tracking Milton. Milton is gathering strength. And so I've seen over the last 5 days how forecasters aren't quite prepared for the new normal. They started at 90 mile an hour winds, and now we're quickly going to 140 mile an hour winds because of how hot the Gulf of Mexico is. It's currently at 86 degrees in October. Last year it was at 78 degrees. Since 2010, according to an analysis by the Washington Post, the Gulf of Mexico has experienced twice the global average of sea level rise. It's irreversible. And over the same period, the population of Tampa Bay has grown twice as much as the national average. So the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning is right now in the middle of a $3.5 billion waterfront project. And this, you laugh, but we have had $27 billion disasters this year. There have been 40,000 insurance claims in Florida alone this year. I think as bad as the wind that's coming this week with Milton, the surge is the storm surge isn't going to have a precedent. And what you're going to have is areas that have already been ravaged by Helene are now going to have all sorts of debris flying on top of debris in waters that are going to engulf Tampa in something that looks to be pretty horrific and has me really scared. Evidently, South Florida is going to be spared this time, but we're all playing like the opposite of this natural disaster lotto with when's one of these hurricanes going to hit in the place that you are.
Do people think that about earthquakes? That it's just a matter of a moment in L.A. and you're going to be sucked into a crack?
So you're saying the Tampa Bay Lightning should change their team name? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. I mean, and the Hurricanes as well. The University of Miami Hurricanes as well. I'm really concerned about what's coming this way this week. And I don't just mean this way, South Florida, because I don't think South Florida is going to be unscathed. The amount of storm surge that is headed this way is going to make life very difficult for people.
When people buy riverfront, waterfront property, especially in Florida, we're always told you're going to pay a premium, but know that in terms of generational wealth, it's going to end up being at some point underwater. None of this should be a surprise to you.
Oh, but insurance companies fleeing the state at the rate that they are make it so that this next disaster feels like the one that's going to make Florida uninsurable.
I don't know if you remember, but last week, I believe I was on the show. It was right before the last hurricane, and I was heading to Sarasota. The day of that hurricane was supposed to hit on a Thursday, and fortunately got a text from somebody who lives out there, shout out Amber Wilson, who said that, you're not even going to be able to get on Siesta Key. They're going to be keeping people off of it. And then we started doing the research and realized that the storm surge, because his condo we'd be staying at was right on the beach, would have flooded your car. Like that would have been at least up to, the seats in the interior. And my partner has a house in Sarasota, and he's now having to do this again, like go through all the hurricane preparation again. And it's just been a couple of weeks, and it just makes you question everything. You don't know what's going to happen. And his neighbor was telling us a story the last time we were there of just her sister just getting caught up in one of those, what do they call, the flash floods, and dying instantaneously because she was coming home to feed her dog because there was a storm on the way.
What are you laughing about?
Seriously.
How can that make you silent laugh?
I'm going to laugh out loud and tell you exactly what was in my head, which is that we spent time in 0405, if you're old enough to remember, here in South Florida, shutters up, then shutters down, then shutters up. We had 4 or 5 hurricanes in a row. This is 20 years ago. And yes, people were talking climate change at the time. And yes, the Gulf of Mexico is warmer. But there are years when there are back-to-back hurricanes. It's happened here before.
But not like this, where they come in like almost without warning. and you're just forming right on top of you in South Florida on any given day. Not this one in particular, but the weather experiences have just been way more severe and without warning. And so when you do get a hurricane situation like this on the way, you're probably thinking to yourself, this might actually be worse than I think historically a Category 3 has been in the past.
You have a choice. You have time to evacuate. Totally different than California, where an earthquake just happens. Hurricanes don't just start on top of you. You absolutely have time to not go to Sarasota or to get out of Miami.
This has gotten to Category 4 now very quickly. They don't know whether it's going to be diluted before it makes some landfall, but the speed with which these things are increasing, I believe, has forecasters only knowing a little bit, because what I'm telling you is that because of the nature of my fear and what I've gotten caught in the algorithms, I'm watching the weather a lot more than I'd like to be. And I've watched over the last 4 days people in St. Petersburg and Tampa who have some expertise in weather not know how fast this thing was going to get to where it is that it's gotten. They knew it was coming. There has been warning. You have to be paying attention to these things. There has been warnings, and you have 4 and 5 days of warning. But what is coming now to Tampa in terms of storm surge? It's not, the winds are bad enough. 140-mile-an-hour winds are crazy. Like, that part is scary enough if you're in your house and you feel all the windows rattling and the doors rattling and water coming into the house because of the flooding. But the storm surge that's coming after that, because it's just the ocean coming to grab land, is something that is like really horrifying. And it's not something that I've experienced before, having lived in South Florida the first 50 years of my life. You say 20 years ago, I've never had this level of fear for what comes this way, because I can tell the forecasters don't know what they're talking about. They're underestimating everything. Just read about the Doomsday Glacier and the way that it's melting in the Arctic and some of this stuff, I know people want to deny climate change because you want to make this something that is just totally random, but the stuff being irreversible is the problem with all this. We don't have a solution.
Confused by David here, where if you get enough warning, then it's okay that your house is destroyed. Like, I don't really understand why you're not making this as serious a deal as earthquakes, which again also destroy things, but without warning.
I had to live in a hotel for a month in 0405. So yes, without power, and it caused me to get a generator, after which there was no loss of power for the next 15 years. No, I do take this seriously. So I think that you're mistaking my reaction. What I'm trying to give you is a frame of reference, which is you have warning here. I do not find it excusable for people not to evacuate. I don't find it excusable for people to die in hurricanes, whereas in earthquakes, it just happens.
Carolina's got warning, and they seem pretty devastated after Helene.
They got way more rain than was anticipated, and then mudslides with all the mountains. It's brutal.
Totally different. That was something that was not actually forecast. We in Florida, we're sitting here. I'm sitting in Miami at the Elster on the 36th floor, and everybody's calling saying, are you leaving? You're not staying. Are you going to keep doing shows? And I'm choosing to stay and do it. So isn't it my fault if something happens to me?
The problem is that so many people don't have the resources to evacuate or be able to go anywhere or pay for hotels or whatever it is that is needed to be done.
Or they have to go to work. There
Right.
was a story of people that
Yes.
weren't able to leave their workplace, and 6 people died because their bosses told them they couldn't leave. Like, this is not like this. It's devastating.
That's
David.
the exact issue. Is there's so many people who are still being forced to stay where they are because we in Florida have long treated hurricanes as like a nuisance or an inconvenience almost, rather than the weather emergency that it is. We wait, are we going to close schools? Are we going to shut down workplaces? Who knows what's it going to be? And the issue that all of us are finding when you talk about the forecasting is something like this one that was originally, it's going to be a 1 or a 2. And so most people don't make the plans to evacuate. And then because of the heat in the Gulf, now all of a sudden it's a level 4 right now. And people are needing to make the proper accommodations and leave, some of which don't have the resources, some of whose bosses are not giving them the opportunity to go.
with a warning or just a watch or not at all?
I would also like to know what our plan is for this week. We can talk about that.
There
off
was a
air, though.
time when all plans were made based off just what Flanagan's is doing. If Flanagan's is open, we're open. That's great. If Flanagan's closes, we're closed.
I'm pretty sure that David just said, I don't think I heard this wrong, that if someone dies in a hurricane, it's not excusable. I believe that that's what he just...
That is unbelievable. Look, when I was what, 15 years old during Hurricane Andrew, which ended up being a Category 5 that hit South Florida. I was just north of the 5 area, so what hit my house is probably a 3 or a 4. But with this warning that you tell us about, David, I knew maybe a day, 2 days ahead of time, that this would be the most harrowing experience of my life because my parents weren't going anywhere. They're like, this is our house. We bought this house. We're not moving. And we stood there, and I was absolute lights out, terrified for hours, thinking we were going to die, like just waiting for the top of the roof to fly off and us hanging in a bathroom, like holding. That stood with me. It still does. It still does to this day. So that warning that was coming made it worse. Not saying that I didn't want the warning, but it actually made it worse because we're watching the TV, watching impending doom until you can't anymore because the lights are out. And then you try with the radio and you may be fine. And it's like, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. You have no idea. Literally, other people in my house fell asleep. I could not fall asleep. I was just literally thinking we were all going to die.
I'm very sorry that happened to you. That sounds
No, but
very
we got warnings, so it was okay.
You can mock the warning all you want. The warnings are there for a reason. Why do you think they're telling people?
No, it's not the warning I'm
to
mocking.
put
It's you.
Marker. No. I hear exactly what you're doing, Izzy. Why are they telling people to put markers so they can be identified? Have you been reading about the government saying that? Put your name and your birth date so you can be identified.
And that's not scary to you.
If that is, it seems what to me?
Scary.
It seems very clear what you're supposed to do with that. You are being told to evacuate, and you choose not to. Those are the people I don't feel for. Do I feel for you and Hurricane Andrew? Obviously.
But, David, did you not hear what they just said? You're being told to evacuate, and
My family couldn't go anywhere.
Some people, because of their means, because they have to make life and death choices that work is making them, there are so many people. Something that's happening very clearly in this country right now is that as people talk about, well, the economy's great. The economy is great for the richest among us, and it creates a division that makes the poorest among us not be able to afford basic necessities. And if you can't afford basic necessities and you're being told to evacuate, but you have to make choices between life and death immediately, or I don't have the means right now to get away, I would say that you're coming from a position of privilege when it is that
it's
you
so
say...
convenient, Dan, to blame my view on privilege or color. There are shelters. There is not one person who cannot evacuate because they don't have the means. It's just not accurate. Now, bosses, Jessica, I would like to say that if you work for someone who makes you come to work when you don't want to come to work, you should have the right to not come to work.
But that doesn't happen, like, ever.
So
and they'll lose their
upset.
jobs, and potentially jobs that are, saving them from whatever. Like, I can't believe that we're in a position where we're, like, blaming people who are being prevented from leaving for whatever reason for the suffering that they might go through. Like, I can't believe that.
I'm happy to try to clarify it one final time for you, which is when you live in a place where I'm not talking about living in Parkland. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about living in Montana. When you live in a place that is subject to weather events, it's not new this year. I was 2 decades. It's at least how Andrew was 4 decades ago. If you live in a place that is at risk, whether you make $10,000 or $10 million, you know that you're in a place at risk, and then your government tells you there is something happening right now. Get out. And then you purposely choose not to. And what Izzy's saying is, because I love my house, I will never abandon it. Or is that why they didn't? Or did they say they couldn't afford to go to a shelter? And I have great respect for that fact, but you're going to choose death or the possibility of death over the inability to go to a shelter?
There was 12 of us in the house, so we didn't have a car that could fit us all, or multiple cars that could get us out of there. And yeah, it was my dad's property. It's the only thing he owned in the whole wide world. So if he's going to leave, why would he leave that behind? No, he's going to stay there and trust that, he prepared us for it.
Is it noble when captains go down with the ship? Is that something that people think
In
about?
Titanic, I mean, I thought highly of that guy. When
He didn't
just-
go down with the ship, man. He bailed.
What are you talking
No,
about?
the captain.
Oh, the main guy. The main guy grabbed it and went down.
The violins are playing, he
Billy
stepped-
Zane? Like
Billy
I have a
Zane.
child.
you had Billy Zane instead
Sorry.
of the captain. There was an opening there for Joe Biden.
Hey, who mentioned the economy, man? Folks.
Jeremy, Saturday Night Live is doing a good job with the political stuff, bringing in a whole bunch of people from the past to do stuff. What is the latest? Because Jessica just mentioned something. I don't know what our plan is here, but we should obviously not have anyone need to come into work if there's any sort of danger involved. But what are the latest forecasts for South Florida? Because I thought that that South Florida was going to largely be spared from everything that I have seen that's in the cone, and it's one of the few places that's going to be spared because it seems like this is a monster storm, and it seems like almost the entirety of Florida is in it. And I told you last week, Orlando is viewed as one of the safest places in the United States because it is a bit landlocked, but this is going right over Orlando, and this doesn't seem like something that's going to be safe in any way for Orlando.
I think the important thing is to follow the local warnings in your area. And in Miami, obviously the big concern is always flash flooding here because our infrastructure doesn't really stand up well to rain, any amount of rain, let alone perhaps a tropical storm, like front of rain coming through. So I don't know what that means for us coming to work because this area, downtown Miami, floods when it drizzles. But it's something that people should be aware of and have a plan for if there's a ton of rain and if there's some bad winds. But yes, like you said, Dan, we're not in the exact path of it. So hopefully we are spared from some of the worst stuff.
But first you said that the forecasters aren't good, but now we're relying on the forecaster to make a company decision. And secondly, if you don't mind, I thought that we had a bunch of flooding here. Was it 2 months ago that half the people couldn't come in because there was major flooding?
We're going to get
Yes, that's
between
correct.
5 to 10 inches of rain. I don't know what that's going to result in flooding. And I would say of the forecasters, they have a general idea for a skeleton of what it is that's going to happen. They have not been inaccurate about what the track of this thing is. What they've been inaccurate about is how quickly it is elevating to speeds that are much higher than what they were talking about 2 and 3 days ago. The track has remained the same for the last 4 days.
Can I go through a company policy that I'd like to get buy-in? And I don't know that I will, but here it is. There are shows that go on. When there's a tragedy or a hurricane, you go to the news, there are people who are putting that on. There are people actually doing side-by-sides. Jim Cantori is a great example of that.
Essential workers.
Essential workers. That's what we are.
No, we're not.
Yes, we are. And I will say that my expectation of Meadowlark is that we're doing shows. If you can't get here, I respect it. Take a personal day. If you can get here, then the show must go on. It's one little part of the country that is this hurricane, not ideal, but the rest of the country, they want your show.
Is this
Dan.
a rah-rah speech?
Yes, come to work.
You also don't have to drive to and from
You
here. You're
think-
I'm
staying
scared of the
here.
elevator breaking down, but I'm going to be here.
Okay.
You think we're essential workers? I think we actually got some sort of dispensation during the
Yeah,
pandemic.
Mike did, I think, because he was going to the studio and you two were. And yeah, Mike was considered, because if he got pulled over, he had something to show them that he was
During
an
the
essential worker.
pandemic at ESPN, I do believe that we were considered essential workers somehow. I don't know how it is we got the special dispensation, but Mike was pulled over in traffic on the way to the Clevelander and was able to say, us.
What did that certificate say? Like, what essential thing was he providing?
Humor, distraction, entertainment,
Levity.
levity.
Jeremy, what do you have for us in terms of updates on this storm?
So in the time we've been talking, it's been elevated to a projected Category 5. And
That's not a joke.
And the
Good
winds,
God.
the winds are supposed to stretch anywhere from South Georgia to the Bahamas. So we are obviously in that cone of where the winds could be, depending obviously on where the eye of the storm breaks. But yeah, that's the spot that we're in now. As an essential worker, my only experience with that during COVID was working at Channel 7, where I just got these numbers from with Phil Farrow, and being told that our sports department that worked in a closet that was showing videos of Trae Young making baskets into his laundry we were essential workers and had to come in and be around people for the sports department. It was
Hell
amazing.
yeah.
Ugh.
You're essential, Jeremy.
I got paid $12 an hour to risk getting COVID and giving it to family. What a nightmare that
You're
was.
welcome.
I have been calling Phil Farrow a weather terrorist for 15 years in South Florida.
He plays guitar in his office, and
Terrible
it's so
choice of
calming.
names. That's terrible. Can you rethink that, please?
A weather terrorist.
Wearerist.
It's weather. The qualifier is on the front end of that. It's weather related because he's been a fearmonger for a long time, but I fear that he's going to be right this time. Let's segue into some lighter stuff. There has been, since David is partaking right here in what amounts to some cheerleading, and he's got a team that's not interested in any of his cheers. Like you're trying to rally the troops, and all of them are staring at you with something between indifference and disdain. Like this is they're shaking their heads at you. No one is motivated by your speech. Let's work. It's worse than your let's have nuance speech from earlier in the show. Nobody should we be making a decision? I realize that these decisions come to me. Should we be deciding now not to come into work on
You're
Wednesday?
asking us if you should decide something.
But I don't
great.
know. I just don't know what's going to happen here in terms of flooding or what kind of danger we're actually in as we speak about this on a Monday.
Let's empower that room and say if you can't make it, we understand, we won't fire you. But if you can make it and you're on the schedule, the show will go on. We're not going to go blank for 4 hours because of rain.
I have a question, David, in terms of the company's liability that maybe you can answer as a lawyer. So if you say, hey, we have a show today, if you can make it, you should come in with the expectation that if you don't come in, there will be some sort of like, we're looking down at you a little bit. And then say someone gets stuck in a flash flood, maybe their car gets destroyed, maybe they even get hurt, or God forbid something worse happens. What is the company's liability in that case? Because I think there's two different approaches here, which is that everyone, it's not going to be a big deal. Everyone come in, just be a little cautious. Or the company makes the decision for the employees and decides we're going to be cautious because none of this is worth risk of loss of life.
Are we a play it safe company or a roll the dice company? That's really what she's asking.
So
we know the answer.
You're a roll
play
the
some
dice,
craps.
but you're willing to start a fund if one of the employees dies.
Can I get a hard 8?
Oh, for the love of God.
I'm
All right,
just-
here's
asked
the
me what
problem. We're not
company
going
would
to talk
do.
about people dying. Here's the problem with David's cheerleading, other than the fact
Let me
that
get a
brings up
6 and an
employees
8.
dying.
No,
all the
I'm going to
time.
record that and keep
Please.
that for legal reasons.
You're gonna because you want the trust.
Cheerleaders these days aren't your old school cheerleaders, David. You have to show, apparently, a toughness never seen before in the history of sports. We've had a couple of incidents lately. I forget which game this was, but there was one that was very popular last week or the week before where there was this one cheerleader doing backflips. And we have the video running now. It was before an Auburn game. The cheerleader doing
Ouch.
backflips and just takes out. Is that an Oklahoma player? Absolutely takes out an Oklahoma player. Probably never been tackled that hard in his life, right? And so I'm like, all right, just a crazy coincidence. Somebody's doing backflips, don't really know what's going on. I think that cheerleader did that on purpose. This past week, I'm telling you, just to show off her toughness. This past weekend, there was a Texas Tech, I believe it was Texas Tech in Arizona game. And one of the players who came, didn't have the ball, came off the field, absolutely trucked a male cheerleader who had one of those big megaphones in his hand.
As they do.
Look at that. Yes, as they do. His knee got caught up underneath. It was just ugly. This cheerleader, hilarious face as soon as he goes down, looks at the crowd, makes sure this player is okay, and then goes off to celebrate his toughness. That's awesome. Oh my goodness, this guy was amazing. It's a Texas Tech cheerleader, and never before has somebody been prepared for that moment more than this guy, because he absolutely made a viral moment out of a spot where he could have taken every ligament out of his knee.
Izzy, both of those videos are breathtaking because in both instances, the football player is absolutely taking the worst of the physical collision by miles. In both instances, the
Yes.
cheerleader is largely fine, and in the second one, jubilant. And the football player is limping away from the collision in obvious pain and disrepair. Both of those. The first one's amazing, though, because you've got
Quick correction on that one. It might have been a male cheerleader.
The Oklahoma team is running out of the locker room, and it's, I don't know, 75 Sooners are running out from the locker room, and this is always amazing. The cheerleader is doing about 10 straight backflips and runs straight into the player in a way that knocks the player down and leaves him in disrepair.
The best part for me of this video is that there's a few players that see the flipping cheerleader and they're like, oh, let's get out of the way. And then just one guy that doesn't see him just jogging and just gets cleared out.
You wouldn't expect the red sea to part. When you're walking on the outside as the player was, you don't expect that flipping cheerleader to make it all the way to you.
Are we working Wednesday?
Start of the day, start of the day. It is your start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is your start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is your start of the day. Start of the day, start of the day. It is your start of the day.
Today's stat of the day is brought to you by Venmo.
I thought you guys would give me some buy-in when I said that Kirk Cousins in his last game threw for more yards than the Patriots had thrown for in their first 4 games. You guys yawned in my face on that stat.
No one is surprised by how bad the Patriots are, though.
We're all
the new
usually
NFL.
yawning while we watch the Patriots play, so
But
that's probably why.
For 509 yards in one game, and the Patriots have 4 games and come in at like 444. Okay, I'm not going to
It's
convince you
October,
of it.
I mean.
Yeah, it is October. Jeremy, what do you have for us on the stat of the day front?
I have 3 different baseball stats of the day. A couple of them come from the Phillies-Mets game because that game was out of control. It was 3-0 Mets, and then, to reference back to the earlier parts of the show, all hell did break loose in this game because Bryce Harper started the scoring with his 2-run home run for the Phillies. And Bryce Harper teams in the postseason have now won 12 straight games in which he has homered. So that's stat number 1. 12 straight games in which Bryce Harper is homered, in which his team has won in the playoffs.
David Sampson has been very hard to impress today conversationally with anything we're talking
king of
about.
poo-poo.
You guys have broken a show record for shaking your head at things that are being said by a single person. Why did you so with your hand that as if it's not an impressive stat that every time Bryce Harper homers through the last few postseasons, and incidentally, he's one of the best postseason players ever empirically and statistically. Why are you saying, that's just an okay stat?
Because the stat is that when you homer or out-homer your opponent, you're going to win the game.
Of course, but it's the longest streak in baseball history of a single player.
It's pretty
And
good.
he extended his
Pretty
own. All right, fine. So he maybe didn't have the best day of everybody on the Phillies. Nick Castellanos himself had a crazy day because he was being booed by the fans. You could see him on TV basically telling the fans to F off.
Home fans.
Then he hit a game-tying homer and ultimately walked it off. But I would argue that the best day of anyone on the Phillies was Bryson Stott. He's the first player with a go-ahead hit in the 8th inning or later of a postseason game on his birthday. How about that one?
That's a good one.
What a
Wow.
birthday. That's
That's
amazing.
a universe of how many people are in that category.
Could cut that laugh up.
I can't imagine there were so many guys to play, but that's a pretty special stat. That's a pretty special birthday.
Happy birthday to him. I don't care.
And finally,
luck.
today's stat of the
Jeremy,
day.
respect.
Stepping all over.
Jeremy, respect the
Doesn't
bleeping
matter without
happy.
the good luck,
Jeremy,
Come on.
So,
Jeremy,
yeah.
Jeremy.
Stop talking.
Honestly, you're so eager to talk all the time, Jeremy, that you disrespect.
Happy birthday to him. I don't care.
So
Good
can I go?
luck.
Oh,
Come on, man.
Get
Comedy.
out, Jeremy. Get out. Get out, Jeremy. I don't even want your third stat of the day.
It was our only hope, though.
I
We
don't want
needed
it.
the third
I don't want
to
it.
make Venmo happy.
I don't want it.
Oh, they're happy.
Make sure that he pays his $5 that he owes.
Via
because
Venmo.
I'm so tired of people around here getting out of all of their fines because they say, I'll get you later.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Make sure that somebody gets his $5.
I have it. I already did it. I got the tenor for you, Izzy. Where is the fine bucket?
The tenor?
Nobody's ever said that word in their life until you just now.
A tenor? Put it on the poll, please, Juju, at LeBatard Show. Have you ever referred to a $10 bill as a tenor?
A
5
10-ski.
You could say a 5 ski.
What's the 10 then? A 10-ski?
Yes. I don't know why we're making it Polish. I don't know why we're making a Polish currency of some sort. Jessica, we haven't talked enough college football today, although we did talk a lot of University of Miami. Give me something college football related, anything at all. You can choose from anything on the wheel of college football issues that you wish to talk about.
Okay, I want to talk about the Texas A&M Missouri game. So something very strange happened before this game. Missouri's one of their wide receivers went to the hotel room at College Station where they were staying and had a package in his room that had a blanket that said "Warm Welcome to College Station," and it was a Texas A&M blanket, and it was supposedly from a Texas A&M DB named Mike the Blanket Lee. So he walked out onto the field wearing the blanket, and it was supposed to be like I'm going to blanket you during the game. You're not going to get any receptions. I don't know why I felt like I had to explain that part, but it felt like it was necessary. So the wide receiver is like, I got this weird blanket. He wore it out onto the field before the game. And then he proceeded to have a terrible first half. Missouri got blown out. They kicked the saddest field goal I think I've seen in, honestly, probably a few years. They were down, I think 41-7 when they kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter. It was not very becoming of a top 10 team. So anyways, after the game, Mike Elko, the head coach at Texas A&M, was asked about this blanket thing. And they were like, did you do this? Like, why did you put a blanket in his room? And he was like, no, you should ask them about that. They did the blanket gimmick to themselves. And we had nothing to do with this. So I'm still investigating the situation to find out who put the blanket in the hotel room. But either way, if Missouri's head coach did the blanket thing to his own player and then they lost by 31 points, ew.
He tried to
Fireable offense.
He tried to do fake bulletin board material. Like, you don't have enough here, so I'm just going to make up a controversy.
The idea that an opposing player would send a gift to somebody as trash talk. First of all, I think it's next level. But then the coach but somebody doing it as a fake, I think that is nonsense.
I don't like gimmicks like this. Gimmicks like this only work if you win. Gimmicks like this when you kick the saddest field goal that I've seen in 10 years that is a tough look. Not to mention, Missouri got totally blown out of this game. Texas A&M had a outstanding game offensively. Connor Wigman was back. He finished in I want to say 90 percentile plus in EPA per play and every other offensive metric in that game. And then the defense had 5 sacks and 8 tackles for loss. So Texas A&M they completely kicked their ass. And this blanket gimmick just makes me feel like I feel awkward. I'm cringing a little bit at this.
The Texas A&M defensive line is supposed to have a couple of guys who, maybe 3 guys who are top 100 picks. But speaking of gimmicks here and things that blow up in your face, I want to show the people. I don't know if people saw yesterday that Odell Beckham made his return for the Dolphins and was wearing a truly wonderful and outlandish flamboyant hat made of an assortment of furs and feathers. And if you're going to come in with that hat upon your triumphant return, you have to do slightly better than 0 catches for 0 yards.
I thought it was John 3:16. Was that not what he was going for?
You think that John 3:16, that's a biblical fur and feather hat? You believe that the feather and fur hat is John 3:16? I don't know what it is that you're doing with that hat. That doesn't look like a biblical times hat. I don't know.
You're going to have to explain this one to me, David.
There was a guy who would go to football games in a wig, and he would hold up a sign. John
You're talking about,
3:16.
yes, many years ago, Monday Night Football, there was a famous fan who would just wear a crazy wig. You thought that was a wig, that's not a stylish hat that Odell Beckham is wearing.
This was Odell Beckham paying homage to this person that only you remember.
I promise you I'm not the only one who knows.
He
the
would
John
wear a wig and
3:16
hold
guy.
up a biblical sign because he was Marlins man before Marlins man.
You old.
I thought you were saying that he was paying homage to the Bible verse, John 3:16, for God so loved the world, he gave the world his only begotten son.
2 targets.
That's John 3:16. He wore a wig that was multicolored. Make fun of me all you want because you've been doing it all show.
Okay.
He is currently serving 3 life sentences in prison.
It's not ideal.
John
What?
3:16 is?
John 3:16 is. He was arrested in 1992 after a standoff at a Los Angeles hotel. I'll find more details and get back to you. But pretty amazing that we'd reference that guy, and he's now in jail for the rest of his life.
3 life sentences. You want to give us your third stat of the day? You redeemed yourself with that factoid. You want to give us your third stat of the day?
Today's pitcher for my Detroit Tigers, Tarek Skubal, his opponent's OPS over the last 2 years is .553. The only American League pitcher with a better run over 2 years in the last 50 is Pedro Martinez.
He's really good.
That's a good stat.
That's
of
a
the
great
day.
stat.
Jay, I need your help. Unfortunately, I'm a
A
Steelers
lot of
fan.
people need your help.
I need you to tell me why the Steelers offense is what it is, even after hiring a new offensive coordinator and getting Justin Fields. Started out 3-0, had a good game against the Colts, and now what happened on Sunday Night Football?
Here's the thing with the Steelers. Steelers, every game, like Steelers football, every game's going to be close. They want to run the ball. They want to run with defense. They're hoping the quarterback doesn't screw up, hoping the quarterback makes just enough plays. That is my team football. That's what it is. And when they brought Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, they told both of them, this is how it's going to be. It's not going to be a high-flying offense. We're not going to be out there trying to throw for 450 yards. This is what it's going to be. But also, like Justin Fields, he's a reclamation project for them. So it's not everybody wants him. You know, the first couple of weeks he was doing great, but he's got a little bit ways to go.
I know. I mean, Mike T football is great, and the defense up until the end they played great. But
Love it when you win 16-15.
it's hard to watch week in and week out. And now I'm wondering what's going on with George Pickens. I'm seeing that he didn't play very many snaps on Sunday Night Football. Do you have any idea what's going on there?
No, I didn't. I haven't talked to them, from last night to this morning there. But Pickens is he's their guy. He's the number one guy on that, that team. They work, I will tell you this, when they were in the Brandon Ayuk trades and the 49ers were looking for another receiver and they brought up George Pickens, Steelers was like, no shot. Absolutely not. No, we're not even going there. So George Pickens is very, very talented, but he's like a lot of receivers. You got to make sure that you kind of handle them in the right way.
Shanahan's 49ers had been 38-0 when leading by 10 points in the fourth quarter and blow yesterday's game to the Cardinals, giving up 11 in the fourth. I want to know the sneaky impact here. Jake Moody makes a tackle in the second quarter, ends up out for the rest of the game, impacts the 49ers' ability to go for any field goals in the long run. They end up blowing this game. How much is Jake Moody attempting a tackle going to influence the NFC playoff picture down the road? Because I believe this tackle ultimately changes everything as the Cardinals get to 2-3 and the San Francisco 49ers drop to 2-3.
You guys stop drug testing over there at the LeBatard Show?
I wish I could get him to talk slightly less, slightly more efficiently when he talks. I have not been able to achieve that quite yet. Do you have an answer to what it is that he is saying there, though, about the 49ers looking less good than any of us thought that they would look?
Yeah, last night I was just texting John Lynch about it, and he was just, it's like, they're off kilter right now, but the 49ers are always that type of team also that as the year gets on, like later on, they're the team that you just don't want to face later on. They're going to, I have zero questions about whether the Niners be a team you want to face down, toward playoff time, down in crunch time there. But I think that, they've had a lot of things that have kind of thrown off their rhythm. One, Ayuk, the preseason 2 with Trent Williams, Ayuk, I think they got thrown off by there. Ayuk, really waiting until week 5 to get on his track. All the injuries, the Christian McCaffrey injury, obviously, look at little Frenchie's going back there. Kittle, Warner, they've had so many different injuries there also. But when it comes down to it, man, a Kyle Shanahan team is going to be a dangerous team later on.
But without Christian McCaffrey, and you've got people suggesting that maybe it might be a very serious injury long term, might even be the same player.
The problem is, with that injury is kind of this inflammation. Like you don't really decide when it's there and when it goes. And also it can come back fully. Like he could be great and all of a sudden, it could just grab again. It's so kind of a weird injury.
What do you make of Devontae Adams putting up Edgar Allan Poe on his social media?
What do you put up? I don't follow. I try not to follow social media anymore, man. That's what my wife is for. She looks at all that crap.
Well,
what do you think?
people assume that it's because, quote the Raven evermore, that it's the poem. What are you making faces at me?
He's not going to go to the Ravens. No,
yeah.
no, not going to go to the Ravens. That's what we're saying. But here's the thing. Devontae, like last Sunday, is that what he put up? Last Sunday, they think that's hilarious.
It's hysterical. It is. It is. You can't help but
I'm
laugh.
not trying to talk over this. I don't know how to do it.
It is
like
funny.
I hardly get speechless, as you know.
It's funny. Where is he going to end up, and what?
Both the Raven
Yeah,
and
I
more.
scream that. Yeah, it's just and then I wanted to say something snarky there, where I'm like, that's why I'm not on social media. Like, hey, what is social media going to say if I say something bad about Edgar Allan Poe? I'm not going to get that wrath. He comes in
You
Sunday.
don't want the Poe zealots to
Yeah,
come
I
out
don't want the
after
Poe-
you.
right,
They're
the
like they're worse
posers.
than the Swifties. Everybody knows
Yeah.
that.
Rest in power.
We don't want the posers attacking me. Leave me alone. So, comes
crushed him.
Sunday, and like last Sunday, everything's fine. Before the game, during the game, after the game, great. He comes in Monday morning. He calls up. He texts Antonio Pierce like, "Hey, I need to meet with you." And AP thought it was about the hamstring, and all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, I'm out. You got to get me out. I don't want my career ending like this. I'm gone. I'm out." And instead of saying, "Well, we'll see. We'll decide," they just kind of granted it and let teams know it's a 2+ if you want it. But I'll say this: there are people in the organization. There are teams that called about Devontae. The Jets did, the Niners did, all these teams in the preseason. And Tom Telesco, their general manager, said, I got to give Antonio time with him. We got to give AP a chance. But there are other people in the organization who said, man, we should trade him because we don't have that quarterback of the future, and he's going to get frustrated. And eventually this is going to lead to this anyway. So let's kind of do it. However, with that said, look, the Jets are in, the Saints, they're in, Steelers play them next week, so maybe they'll look at it also. The Ravens, though, love their team chemistry. I don't see the Ravens making this move. And there's not a lot of teams who have the cap space to just bring him in as it is. Like if the Saints want to do it, they're going to have to redo his deal or have the Raiders take on some of the money, which they don't want to do. So they'd have to redo them to an extension where a team like the Jets don't have to do it. So there's a lot of factors involved there.
This episode of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz is presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York.
I should have told
Who
people.
drank a lot of Smirnoff is that Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did.
everyone knows
Heard
that
about
about all the posers. A toast from the posers to
That's
Edgar
just me
Allan
trying to
Poe.
get back on their good side. Yeah.
Yes, I appreciate that. Aaron Rodgers, his performance on Sunday and in general, what are you making of what's happening there?
I mean, it's some of it is man, it's not Aaron Rodgers-ish, right? But I think we're kind of almost taking away the fact that the guy missed a whole year. He just missed a whole year, right? Missed the entire year. Didn't do any preseason with these guys. The timing is just not what you want it to be. But I'm a little surprised. The running game's not going better. Defensively, that unit still is personnel-wise, they've got a fantastic team over there. Personnel-wise, they're fantastic. So yeah, a lot of it falls under on Aaron, and they put so much on Aaron to be the savior over there.
Tell me, Jay, what happened with that cat? I want more information on
No,
that.
it's a dog. It's a dog. Not only is it a dog, come here. Where's Lucky? Not only is it a dog, it's a little handicapped Frenchie that we rescued from a kill shelter. Okay. And these people were like, yeah. So now I'm gonna make you feel bad. But these people brought him into a kill shelter because his legs don't work anymore. And the kill shelter's like, well, there's non-kill shelters here. And whoever brought him in is like, nah, it's okay. His legs don't work anymore. So we rescued him. And my wife Rosie there did massage and laser. And here, baby.
He's got speed. He scampered. He scampered.
And she got him walking and running. Here, come here. He's making a little cameo. See? Hey, here he is. See?
Yes.
Hey. Yeah. Hey, by the way, Lucky, huge Edgar Allan Poe fan.
Yes,
Naturally.
as we all are. What do you make of what happened with Josh Allen, the Bills, and specifically the time management at the end of that game, Jay?
Yeah, that didn't make a lot of sense right there, that time management. I think the Bills, though, it's pretty interesting. Kind of, I don't know if it's getting rid of one guy, but they do seem like more of a team. I kind of don't look at it and go, team by game by game. I kind of don't judge them. I judge them more, but by what I think is the whole product. And I think the whole product as a team, they do look better. They do look like they're more on the same page. When you don't have to force the ball to one guy and you don't kind of have that drama anymore, I do think they're a better team. I think the clock management was a head scratcher. Yes. The coach got to kind of get out of the way there. Yes.
Let's put up on the screen here Stephon Diggs giving Josh Allen the side eye at the end of this game here between.
Yeah, but didn't they love each other up or no? Do they?
Well, we prefer to accent the negative and the side eye from Stephon Diggs. There may be great context here, and they said all the right things.
He could have been looking at somebody over there. I don't know.
It could be. You're right.
Very telling, I think.
We're probably.
It's like those lip readers who come on. I'm like, you're so full of shit. You don't know what these people say, or the body language experts.
Agreed. Totally unfair, but funny nonetheless. It was a weird game, though, for Josh Allen. He played very poorly. And also, Jay, the science of he seemed pretty clearly concussed. Like he needed to be out of that game, did he not? The science on how they put people in and out of the game seems fairly arbitrary still.
But it is hard to do that because sometimes, if you're dinged, man, I'm usually the worst guy to talk about head injuries with, guys, because my other job was to remove you from your consciousness. So I'm usually a bad guy to talk about this stuff. And we used to spar in practice and you get knocked out, they pull you aside, they give you smelling salts, and you come back later that day or the next day. So there's kind of different levels. So it's, I'm always kind of like, oh man, I'm the fucking worst guy to talk about these things.
Jay, when Joe Burrow says his team is not a championship caliber team after scoring 38 against the Ravens in overtime, is he just calling out his defense right there?
No, I think they're kind of looking at, look, first of all, they have been decimated. That defense, like Lou Anarumo, that defense coordinator, and that side of the ball, they are phenomenal. And they have been decimated by injuries, starting all the way back in camp. And there's only it's like the Rams. There's only so many injuries you can kind of go through. There's so many teams that are dealing with that right now. There's only so much you could overcome. And I think he's frustrated because they're not playing at the level that they're normally used to playing at. And also like, hey, if you're on an NFL roster, you're expecting a guy to, hey, next man up. But that's kind of like cliche. It's not the truth. It's like, you can't have next man up. If you got, if Puka and Cooper go down for the Rams, you can't just assume, the next two guys are going to be on their level. And it's the same thing with, guys over there in Cincinnati. And they've had a lot of drama, right? With Chase going over there, and T. Higgins was legitimately banged up. But I just think that they've been so banged up. They are Zach Taylor. People always talk about the Sean McVay coaching tree with LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell. And you forget Zach Taylor for some reason. He is, that's one of the best coaching staffs in the NFL over there. And I just think that they've just kind of been behind the 8 ball with so many injuries.
With all those injuries and some of the other team struggles, Jay, how bad is the AFC? I feel like this is the worst conference I can remember in years, all the way down. There are so many weaknesses. After the Chiefs, who are undefeated, I mean, every single team has weaknesses. Even the Ravens gave up 38 points in their win. Like, there have been these teams that have...
They gave them 38 in their what?
I know they won. The point being is that I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, the depth within this conference, there is just a giant drop-off of talent after those first handful of teams, and even those handful of teams seem to have some major weaknesses, no?
Yeah, I think every team in the league has pretty much weaknesses, but even the Chiefs, they got weaknesses at receiver. They got weaknesses at tackle. That's how this league is, but no, I think the Chiefs, they're going to, as they get healthier too, the receiver position, they'll get better if they get more depth over there. If they figure out their tackle situation more. But the Ravens, man, no, that place is a culture of violence. They are, and plus too, they got pick your poison. Now that they got Derrick Henry rolling like that, who are you going to focus on? You can focus on Derek, you can focus on Lamar, but you're expecting everybody else to play like, man, they're the 72 Dolphins every single game. That's not how this league is. But I think the Bills do. I think the Bills are, besides a brain fart and that some time management over there, I think the Bills are a team who are up here when it comes to ranking the teams in the NFL.
Jay, good talking to you as always. I don't think that the Ravens can have a culture of violence if the Steelers have the culture of violence. You said last week that they can't both have the culture of violence. One of them needs to have the culture of violence. One of them.
It's not exclusive.
It is exclusive. Jay, it's got Jay.
No, it's not copyrighted.
Good talking to you.
I should copyright it.
See you later. Good talking to you.
Yeah.
Enjoy talking Edgar Allan Poe with you. Good seeing you.
David.
Yeah. Keep non-drug testing over there.
David Sampson's primary contribution today was to tell us again and again what month it was, as we talked about the, things that happened in sports yesterday, which is indeed during this month. He didn't think it was relevant that the University of Miami won the way that it won. I will be on Nothing Personal with David Sampson all week. You can find it 8 a.m. Eastern on YouTube live every weekday. But Izzy's got a top 5 list of the top 5 comebacks in University of Miami football history. Jess, did you ever find out whether or not this can classify as the biggest victory in Vanderbilt sports history of any kind, the victory over Alabama? I don't believe they've had as big of a victory in basketball or baseball that I will remember like that one, but I'm doing it off the top of my head. I don't remember any Vanderbilt sports achievements in my lifetime.
Well, I think it depends about the amount of importance you place on college football, Dan, because I don't know. David and Jeremy might argue that a World Series championship.
College World Series
twice.
Didn't know they had won the College World
twice,
Series.
Yes,
okay,
recently.
Didn't
I think
know
2019,
that.
right?
14
Would you
and
count
19.
that as more? Or
No,
not?
I would not.
I mean, but college football. Am I right?
Yes, put it on the poll,
You need
Choo-Choo.
to say more?
What's more impressive, beating Alabama in football or winning the College Baseball World Series twice? Because I really was just doing basketball and football, so that's an ignorance on my part. What does your top 5 list look like? Do you have any OLI, Izzy?
Before we get to the OLIs, of which I have 2, University of Miami has a long history, Dan. That's a lot of potential comebacks. It's been a lot of decades going on. I'm only 47. I was alive, but I don't really remember a lot of those 80s ones. So I made the list basically from the time that I graduated college in 1999. That makes sense for everybody, right? Sure.
Okay, yes, the last 25 years,
there
basically.
we go. So it's the last 25 years, and there are 2 OLIs.
All right, quarter century of comebacks. David, do you think that the victory over Cal is going to make his top 7 here?
Well, with 2 OLIs and only doing it to 1999, yes, it better, or else
All right,
we
let's
spend
see what
40
we've got.
minutes
Let's
for
see
nothing.
what we've got. Yes, 40 minutes. It was almost 50 minutes we spent on that University of Miami victory. What's your first OLI, Izzy?
OLI number 1, October 23rd, 1999, 15 years after Hail Flutie. We all remember Hail Flutie, where they beat the Hurricanes on a Doug Flutie Hail Mary. The Canes rallied from 28 points down in the third quarter to beat Boston College in Boston 31-28. Call that the Kenny Kelly era, if you can even call the Kenny Kelly era an era. Can you say that?
You
I can't say
cannot
that.
say
I
it.
cannot
You
say that.
you
very
had
well.
cut that up for me, Chris, so that at the end of this I can play for Izzy how poorly he said Kenny Kelly. The other OLI.
The other OLI is this comeback currently happening by the University of Miami. Look, the amount of shit we've had to take over the years, whether it be from you or from Mike Ryan or even Stugotz saying, hey, the U is back, the U is back. And we had to go through coaches like Al Golden and Manny Diaz and Randy Shan and still believe that they're back. This kind of feels like the realist they're back. So this comeback currently is OLI
Number 5.
Number 5, October 12th, 2002, extending their winning streak to 28 games. The defending national champion Hurricanes come back from 14 down in the fourth quarter against hated rival FSU. You might remember this one as wide left.
They were down 19-3 in a fourth quarter against FSU, but that might have been previous to 99 because that was like Michael Irvin.
It also didn't feel the same way this one did. The Hurricanes were number 1. They had this really long winning streak. It was FSU at home, and they came back after being down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. Dan, pretty big.
I'm looking right now at Kenny Kelly's because I don't know who Kenny Kelly is. I've got Kenny Kelly was a Major League Baseball player in the 70s. I got Kenny Kelly singer. I'm not remembering a Kenny Kelly era of University of Miami football.
Okay, well, we're going to have to look that one up. Number 4, September 6, 2003. Trailing 33-10 in the third quarter to the hated Florida Gators in the Orange Bowl. Not done. Former Florida quarterback Brock Berlin, who transferred to Miami, scored 28 unanswered points for the Hurricanes for a 38-33 win.
Rest in peace, Kenny Kelly of 90s R&B group Riff.
Don't think that's him. Number 3, October 31st, 2015. It was just a 3-point comeback, Dan. It was just a 3-point comeback, but it included 6 seconds and 8 laterals, okay? And, of course, Cornelder ended up winning it, taking it to the house to beat number 22 Duke in Durham.
Is a 3-point comeback?
It's a comeback because there was 3 points down, and there was 6 seconds left on the clock. Think about that. You have to come back in 6 seconds, David.
It was one play.
Okay, huge comeback. Number 2, October 5th, 2024. Coming back down 25 in the third quarter to Cal in a classic Atlantic Coast Conference rivalry game within, again, I said this earlier, spitting distance of the Pacific Ocean that began the Hurricanes Cal game at 10:30 Eastern Time.
Number 1.
Number 1, September 27th, 2024. This comeback came with no time on the clock. Can you get more impressive than coming back with no time on the clock from that ridiculous touchdown call against Virginia Tech in the Hail Mary? If they didn't have replay, would have immediately gone down as a top 3 worst call in the history of sports, but the Hurricanes prevailed, coming back and winning that game after review.
Jeremy, can you tell me where I stand corrected on the Kenny Kelly era of
Thank you, Jeremy.
University of Miami quarterbacking?
Kenny Kelly was drafted to the Tampa Bay Rays in 1997 out of high school, but forwent going to the minor leagues to play college football at the University of Miami. He was the starting quarterback in 1999. He then had a storied career in Major League Baseball in which he had, I believe, 87 at-bats.
Give me, please, the sound, Chris Cody, of Izzy trying to say Kenny Kelly correctly.
The Kenny Kelly era, if you can even call the Kenny Kelly era an era. Can you say that?
No, you can't.
The Kenny Kelly era, if you can even call the Kenny Kelly era an era. Can you say that?
By the way, Vanderbilt won a national championship in bowling in 2023.
Wow!
Welcome to DraftKings Crowning Moments. It's a segment in which we like to shine a light on those winning bets from the weekend, and I got a sample here for you that I think you'd enjoy. These are nice, big, juicy ones. One bettor bet $25 on the Atlanta Falcons defense or special teams to score an anytime touchdown in that game against the Saints at plus 1,900. That got a $500 payout. Congratulations to you. Another person bet $10 on the correct score of the Houston Texans-Jacksonville Jags game at plus 9,000 to turn their $10 bet into a $910 payout. That's going to help at the end of the month when you're doing your bookkeeping, folks. And finally, we had an octopus in the Minnesota Vikings-Green Bay Packers game. Do you know what an octopus is? It's when someone scores a touchdown and then on top of that gets a 2-point conversion. A bettor correctly predicted that there would be one in this game to get $80 from their $5 investment in that one. Crowning Moments is presented by DraftKings. Submit your winning bets for a chance to be featured. DraftKings, the crown is yours.